Grace from NFP Connect, and we are connecting communities. And I am here with Pip Job from the Department of Primary Industries. Hi, Pip.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. So I'm so excited because you and I have been we've talked about meeting for a fairly long time, but we haven't. And I was really excited to catch up with you because I think there's so many elements. Like whilst we on the coast, are just dealing with the COVID, you've really had the last 6 months, year. Well, actually, no, it's been a long time. About droughts and then fire and then COVID, and floods. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you support the community.
Sure. So my role with the Department of Primary Industries, I'm the Director of Engagement. And so for those listening that aren't sure what primary industries encompasses, that's agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and DPI. We also do biosecurity and food safety as well. Part of my role is supporting a number of teams, and we effectively pick up the people part of primary industry. So I've got the Rural Resilience Program, the Fire Recovery Support Service from the recent bushfires, Young Farmer Business Program, Rural Women's Network, and I also have a stakeholder engagement team. And we have all been really super busy since, for a long time. As you said, drought has been around for a significant period of time. That's been something that the Rural Resilience Program in particular have been discussing since about 2017 and responding to. In 2018, I had 12 months as the State Drought Coordinator, supporting the government's initiatives to start to support as that drought really escalated. We've dealt with the bushfires over this last bushfire season. We had some minor flooding events that happened not that long ago here in New South Wales, both coastal and inland in Western New South Wales. And now, obviously, we're dealing with COVID as well. So it's been an unprecedented experience of dealing with real adversity, to say the least. So we're all being tested, everyone, on ground, on farms, in communities, and as staff. Yeah.
So talking about, like if you think about, say, February, we get to February and you're like, fires are because then the floods happened.
Oh, there was a small window there of all the fires technically being out. It was very small.
And then, how do you I'm just I'm trying to get the question, but when you're trying to support all these communities and there's one thing after another, like where does that sit?
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting question. As in my role, I worry a lot about the people in our team because they've been operating at a very high functioning level for a very long period of time. And all of my staff are people. They love connecting with people. They have tremendous amounts of empathy for everyone that they're dealing with. And that's a really exhausting thing and exposes people to vicarious trauma. They're dealing with people experiencing trauma. So constantly at the forefront of my mind is, are we providing enough support to our staff? And sometimes it's working out, who do you need to back away, even when there's the next wave of adversity coming in, to say they need to go and recharge, and I bring in the other troops, and you try and rotate people around, work with, the fabulous team leaders I've got, because they know their staff and they know the communities that they're dealing with as well. So it's been very, very challenging, and making sure that we continue to have that support to communities, farmers, to rural communities, has been so critical. And we're really being tested at the moment because the way that we've always done business is very much about face-to-face. It's direct contact. It's working with communities to respond in the way that they want that response to look like. Whereas right now, we're all tested tremendously because of social isolation.
Has there been much of the COVID in the community and rural areas, like as in cases?
Yes, so here in Dubbo, I think we've had sort of this electorate area, in total, I think we've had sort of up around the 40 cases. There's certainly parts of Western New South Wales where they've had no cases to date. So it's so important that we have that responsibility of looking after ourselves and our own health and not becoming infected, but also the responsibility that we have in not infecting others. So it's been really important that staff don't travel. Even though we're classed as essential workers, we're trying to really make sure that if there is travel required, that it's critical travel, and that we sort of make sure that we look after these areas that don't have it, but also don't send staff into areas where they are classed as hotspots as well.
So what is an average, like what does your staff do to support the community? Like we talked briefly about the
Yep.
different programs, but what kind of
Yeah.
actionable kind of,
Yeah, well, they all look a little bit different. So the Rural Resilience Program, we've got staff members scattered right across the state, and some of them do cover really big areas. But what their role is to connect into all the communities, connect into the key networks, and it's very much about resilience is about working with those communities to co-design, and we enable them to do what they need to do. Community always knows the solution to the issue that they're trying to address. So we try and bring that out in those communities. We equip them with the skills that they can deliver because that builds their capacity. That's a function of resilience, that they can take on issues into the future because they've learnt skills as they've gone. That team also have a role in helping to respond when there is a natural disaster. So they kick into support mode and also trying to get in place those foundations to start the recovery phase. So those guys are very much face-to-face, direct in that community, working with people. A bit different to how the Young Farmer Business Program does their work. So those guys focus on 18 to 35-year-olds, young farmers and fishers to build business skills. So we're looking at business resilience and given that age group that they're targeting, they deliver in a very different way compared to the Rural Resilience Program. So they run a lot of nighttime workshops. They're short, sharp, fun, highly interactive, lots of digital connectivity, lots of social media presence with that program. And they've had to flick over to doing things digitally at the moment to keep momentum, to keep delivering and engaging with their audience. So two different teams doing things very differently, but that's what counts. You've got to morph your programs and meet the needs of your target audience. So important because that you get greater buy-in, improved outcomes in what you're trying to achieve, and they have such great rapport with their audiences because it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Amazing. So what kind of impacts has COVID had, say, on farmers, and the community, like those sorts of, I mean, that their primary industries are everything that sort of sustains us in the cities. So what kind of things, how has this impacted your communities?
Yeah, so farmers, I think in general, are probably adapting pretty well to being at home in isolation. We're so fortunate. Every weekend, like we as our family, there's 6 of us. We've got 4 teenage boys all at home under the roof with us at the minute. But we've got space, we can go out in the paddock, down the dams. We're really lucky that way. And I think for a lot of farmers, they feel a bit of a blessing at the minute that you're at home, but you've got a massive environment around you in which to still do life. And farming as a practice, as an enterprises, but they can keep doing what they need to do. They can hop on tractors and sow crops at the moment. They can go and do stock work. There's challenges in some of the other sectors at the moment. If you're in horticulture and you need to do picking of fruit, there's challenges at the moment about the workforce that's required to do those sorts of things. So the impact of COVID on the primary industry sector varies whether you're a farmer on a farm versus moving through into, just say, if you need packing sheds on farm because you're a horticulturalist, and then moving through the food chain or the supply chain to get food to actually supermarket shelves and into your home. There's different challenges along as we go. but a lot of the challenges I think people are experiencing at the moment is just around that workforce, looking after their staff, maintaining safety on farms. Yeah, with all those workforce issues, is the big one at the minute.
Yeah. What have you learned or are learning through the process? I mean, I feel like you kind of have just been you're ahead of the game in regards to understanding resilience and knowing what are you learning? What can you?
Yeah, look, it's been so important for people to embrace change quick. If you resist change, then it becomes a very traumatic experience. So, and that applies also inside into our own department and our teams. Like, um, we've had some long discussions in the past about moving to video conferencing and stuff like that. And some staff members have felt very confronted by having to do that. But this experience has helped, has, I guess, forced the hand to make them have to do it. And they're realizing that, wow, actually, this is a really good technique to use. It's not as frightening as you think. So we're all having to learn. Like, I don't know how many different webinar sort of video conferencing meeting platforms I've had to use for the first time in the last couple of weeks. And adapting to the fatigue of spending all day on video conferences. Like, it's lovely seeing people, but yeah, there's only so long all day that you can stare direct at people in their face. We're all having to learn new skills and be open to that learning and to the failures. Like, geez, we've had some cracking webinar or video conferencing failures where tech has just gone a bit wrong, but we're all open that is the case, and that you could be sitting here and all of a sudden the cat's going to jump on your lap, or you could get swooped by a magpie any minute now. But we're all open to the fact that we're all experiencing these things, and it's all new. But yeah, as I said, just being open to change and go with it. Don't fight it, because that'll be the pain point that you'll have if you fight and resist change.
Thinking about that change and the fear of change, how do you process that or get through that for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the challenges that we have at the moment is we're all incredibly plugged into social media and to the news at the moment, and that can be extremely overwhelming. And for me personally, early in the stage where COVID was really getting its momentum up and growing, I had to pull away from watching the news. A lot of information on my social media feeds was misinformation, or things that were being escalated that didn't need to be escalated. So the best strategy for me was just to pull away from watching that, and I'm fine with it all now. But just that early stage when there was so much hype, so much uncertainty. So having strategies for yourself, knowing what those cues are, and putting boundaries in place for yourself, and then holding yourself accountable to those is really important. But I think everyone's different. Like, if you're an introvert versus an extrovert at the moment going through this experience, that looks very different. So for people that need to talk about stuff, it's really important that they pick up the phone or video conference with people that they know and talk through it. That's what you need. Introverts, we've got, as I said, 4 kids, 2 are extroverts, 2 are introverts, and it's really interesting watching the boys, how they're coping through this. The introverts, it's like nothing's changed. They're quite happy. The 2 extroverts cannot wait to get back to school. So, so everyone's different. You have to understand what is it that you need, set those healthy boundaries. And if you are feeling confronted by something, pick up the phone and either ring a friend or we have so many mental health support lines now. There is no shortage of assistance there to help people talk through things. And they are professionals on the end of the phone, whether they are social workers, psychologists, counsellors. They know how to have the conversation with you to step through it and help you process what you're thinking. And I think that's something, one of those stigmas often around that mental health message is people think it's about admitting that they're not coping or that it's a form of weakness. But the benefits in having someone step you through a conversation that helps you process your own thinking is incredibly helpful, and it will just take away a lot of angst in how you're processing things.
And I think that we spoke to Rob Sams from Lifeline a little while ago, and similar to that, it doesn't have to be, a suicidal thought or a whatever. It could just be high anxiety, or I'm just stressed, or having someone that's not in your immediate environment is so it's such a healthy way to deal with or extract. Because the other thing that happens if you don't extract and you don't get it out, you actually take it out on everyone around you, which then heightens the anxiety level. So having an external outlet is really important, especially in these times, to be able to calm and pull out what might have, because our brains create anxiety as well in some ways with too much information. So being able to pull it out, it helps. So I think it's just even the smallest of things to defuse. I call the Coke bottle, like every time we wake up in the morning and something stresses us out, it's a Coke bottle gets shaken, and then something else happens and it shakes again, and then and then throughout the day, and then someone will say something really, really silly, and you just open the Coke bottle and bang, it all comes out. And it's actually being able to defuse and allow that stress to come out throughout the day, and understanding how you deal with that. Absolutely.
People need to also just remember at the moment, we are in extraordinary circumstances. So things that you may not, under normal conditions, have felt a certain way about, or reacted to a certain way, or in a certain way, at the moment it's all different. So people shouldn't go too hard on themselves. It's an extraordinary time. Who would have thought that in one roof you'd be doing schoolwork, university, working, being a stay-at-home parent, all this mixture that you never set your life up to be. Like, I know I was very purposeful that I would never be a school teacher, and I haven't really been a stay-at-home mum either. I went back to work not long after I had my kids, and it's all, now here I am. So don't go too hard on yourself, and reach out and use these resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Programs or resources have you discovered through this time?
Yeah, I think one of our challenges, especially in the work that we do, is the reach out across all parts of New South Wales. Telecommunications is a challenge. So finding platforms that have the best capacity to deal with poor bandwidth has been really critical. So we found that the Teams function in Microsoft 365 seems to have a really good capacity to withstand poor bandwidth. As Zoom seems to be okay as well, but some of the others, if you want the function of being able to hear and see, then that's something that we've had to be really considerate about. Also making sure that everything has an alternate phone line that people can ring in on. I've had plenty of meetings, or there's been webinars where people have had to ring in on their phone to have the sound, and then have plugged in with the video, just so that they can have reliable sound. So that has been the biggest lesson for us, is trying to engage with all the different people that we need to, but doing it in a way that can withstand that limitation of telecommunications. I should also say that I have been on meetings with people in Sydney, and they're experiencing the same problems with bandwidth. So it's not unique to rural New South Wales by any means, but it's something that we've had to be more considerate about. Some of our team members are upskilling people in their region on how to use platforms like Zoom. So these are a lot of groups that have never had to use this technology before, and they in our rural communities, often those volunteers that are the movers and shakers behind a lot of the organisations that keep towns thriving, they are an older volunteer base, so their technological literacy isn't as great. So we've got staff that are stepping out of their comfort zone and trying to upskill community members so that they can continue to have their community meetings or board meetings using technology. So technology has been the biggest lesson that we've learned. But I think also just the gift of picking up the phone. and learning how to reconnect with people through a phone call. It's pretty easy just to rely on big social events or community events and that face to face, but the art of picking up the phone and having a conversation, and allowing more time. I think a lot more people are experiencing longer phone calls in connecting with their clients, and just being open to at the moment, being purposeful about why you're calling someone, but also making that time just to make it a social touch point. So there's a few old skills I think we're just having to tap back into as well, and especially for some of our programs don't normally pick up a phone and ring someone. Yeah, they're having to learn the art of just a phone conversation.
And that's so important. I think I was talking the other day about my priorities have changed on which form of communication I like in this circumstance. When everything coming at you, call me. Like, let's have a phone conversation. If you send me a text or an email via certain things, it's not as personal. And so when you've got all the platforms in your face, you're like, well, what one am I going to use to connect with on a proper basis? I probably need to tell people about that, but I think that's the learning of which is everyone's going to have a different way in which they want to connect, or how they like to connect, and that's
I was only just discussing with a couple of my team leaders the other day that our email inbox seems to have exploded with emails, and it's interesting how much more email communication is going on at the moment. Almost to the point where I'm about to ban emails. I spent so much time just trying to catch up on my inbox. What did I miss?
For community organisations, you had this really great quote before that was like, communities actually know what they need to do, but I think in a time like this, it can get lost, or they can look to external sources to get the information. What do you what's your advice for community organisations or communities that are just trying to work this out together?
Yeah. So what we do know is there's a couple of other features of resilience at a community scale. So leadership is one of those. So it's a critical element of resilience for community. And as pointed out earlier on, our communities have been going through a wide range of adverse experiences for quite some time now. So resilience isn't something that you just keep building up over time. It is something that ebbs and flows, and things like a bushfire or a flood or the death of a key person in a community, all of these things can change a community's resilience threshold at that point in time. Resilience is about how you bounce back, but bounce forward from the experience as well. So we know that there is no one size fits all with every community. They're all very, very unique. Some communities need far more assistance than others. So the first point is, I think, those communities that have really great resilience, and they'll know it's them because they've got lots of things happening. They're the ones that adapt really quickly, have strong support structures. So how we help them, they might have innovative ideas or new concepts, or they want to skill build and they reach out really quickly. And those communities, I think, have a great gift to share in telling other communities about what they do, why do they do it, how they do it, what are the glitches behind the background, what's the governance structure, all those sorts of things. So they have a richness to share with other communities. At the other end of that scale, we've got communities that need a tremendous amount of support and help. And there's plenty of those at the moment, especially in those fire-impacted areas that do need a lot of help. So what I would sort of say to those communities that are desperately needing assistance is to reach out to those support networks that are there to help you, whether it's reaching out to the Resilience Program or to the fire recovery support staff that we have here in the DPI. There's also, in those fire communities, there's Service New South Wales, there's Office of Emergency Management staff, there's the local government agencies there's so much support network there. So just reach out and say, we need help. And hopefully those communities have already got those assistance points embedded in their communities. Other communities in the drought areas, again, it's about utilising these networks that we have in place. And going, and you may not know what you need, but you could say to say our staff, we need to do something. Here's the issues that we're seeing, and our staff can tap into the network across the state and say, what do you guys see? What have you seen that might be able to address this? What's an idea? And have that transference knowledge from community to community. So we can help people look at what are the options if they're really stuck. We don't like to tell people what to do or communities on how to do things. If they can find something that resonates and seems to have the right fit for them, there's nothing better than watching a community take that and deliver, because it'll always be far more successful than if we turn up and say, hi, we're from the government, we've got a solution for you.
That'll work.
Yeah.
So on that point of that resilience, and I think it's a really cool key point, is I think we also need to understand that whilst we were talking about communities, it's also us. I think some days you feel like you're on top of the world and you get so much done, and then other days, like yesterday, for example, I gardened, cooked, I did everything but what I probably should have been doing. And that was my day to just recover, and then I knew that I've got 2 big days to come. So I think we also need to have that concept of there's going to be some days where we're going to be so on fire and we're going to know the answers to everything, and then there's going to be days where we're like, nah, I'm not going to, cover. And I think we need to be mindful of that as well. I think, how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. So we, as a department, and I think it's probably across all government agencies in New South Wales, I think I'm pretty confident saying that, trying to support our staff in recognising that these are unusual times and everyone's working in unusual circumstances. They're working from locations they may not normally work, and they're probably working under a roof with people they don't normally spend 24/7 with. Often we get to send our kids off to school, or our partners go to work, or whatever it might be. So we're making sure that our staff have that flexibility, that if they need to have a tag team system with their partner where, hey, you look after the kids in the morning, I do the afternoon shift, and therefore that person works from 5 a.m. until 10 a.m. and then comes back in at later in the day. We're trying to be flexible to meet the needs of our staff members' lives. But also that balance about, when we start to switch these things off and go back to sort of business as usual, that we support staff on that way out as well, because that'll be a transition. And as we know, as the public health orders are modified, that we're going to have to still adapt as we go out. And that could be as confusing as it was as those things came into place. So there was quite a lot of uncertainty, and it was so important as an organisation to communicate clearly with staff and communicate often so that they understood what was being asked and how to adapt to that. But just like that, it's so important to know when to switch off. And something that I've noticed that we're probably seeing more of is staff working longer hours, not shorter ones. So there's often a fear of when staff go work from home that they're not going to be doing doing their jobs, or that you haven't got that visibility. But I'm finding having those very purposeful conversations with staff and saying, I want you to set the boundaries of when you're on the job and when you're off. And when you're off the job, don't do it. Just turn off your notifications on your phone. Don't, if you can avoid having your work phone with you, avoid it. Just be very purposeful, because it's too easy at the moment just to stay constantly on the job.
So last question is, what is the blessings that you've seen that's come from this?
Oh, there's so many. I've loved seeing, like from a work perspective, I've loved seeing teams adapt really quickly. Like early in the piece, I said, okay, guys, we've got to rise to the challenge here. We need to adapt, go online, keep your engagement going. It's not about suspending, things. It's about modifying, keep going, because people still want good news. They still want things to help them not think about COVID. So to keep running, for the Young Farmer Business Program, to keep running their bank savvy workshops and doing social connection was so critical. So I've been so thrilled at watching the teams adapt. later today, we're announcing the 2020 New South Wales ACT Rural Woman of the Year winner on Facebook. We're doing that live. So, and normally that's a big gala event. So, so we're just watching teams shift, readapt, do things a different way than what they've normally done or have had planned for some time as well. That's been really exciting. So I'm so proud, and I think it's such a blessing about there's a whole range of new skills, new ways of doing business that we can continue to use post-COVID. And those lessons about next time we have got adverse events like this, you can go, okay, we did this last time, it worked well, we just flick that switch straight away. At a community scale, it's been really wonderful just watching community just respond in the most positive ways of being, societal creatures. I live at my local little town's called Geary. It's got a population of, I think it's 250, 300 people. But just watching on the community Facebook page, hey, I'm going to town today. Does anyone need anything from the chemist, or, who needs milk, that kind of thing. And it's just lovely to watch community supporting one another, keeping an eye open for those in our community who are vulnerable and might need our help. And, no one's left behind. I think that's just outstanding. And then watching businesses adapt. Like, there's a beautiful story here in Dubbo of two cafes collaborating together. Now, in a normal environment, you would probably say that they are fierce competitors and, there would be no reason for them to collaborate, but they're collaborating. And I just think that's just outstanding that they're doing business differently. They've had to adapt. They're doing takeaway meal kits and online, here's our chef showing you how to make this recipe of the week. They just quickly adapted to the little takeaway window, online orders and payments. Just watching stuff like that happen in community, I just have such great admiration for these little business owners who are saying, you won't stop me. I'm here and I'm going to plough my way through it. But also that in acknowledging those businesses that have been forced to close their doors as part of the social order, the health orders. It's great watching community also support those people as well, because that must be an extremely difficult time for those business owners, their staff. It's a bit sad when you sort of drive into Dubbo and you drive past Centrelink, and initially the lines of people out on the streets was pretty tough. And I just read an article yesterday that said just here for the Western area, 8,000 people have lost their jobs in this area alone as a result of COVID. So, just seeing ways that we can fold these people into our society, make sure that they're being looked after, that no family is suffering as a result, and there's just tremendous social good. I hope we hold on to it in perpetuity from here.
So this is a random question, but what do you hope that we learn out of this context, like out of COVID, and what from the last little while? What would be the best way to come through this, do you think?
Yeah, look, there's a pretty strong message that's been sent to us between drought, the scale of bushfires that we saw, intense flood events. Now there's already locust plagues in the Western Division. We're trying to get farmers to respond to really early, and that's to preempt any major locust plague later in the year. There's a real call at the moment for looking at the big picture, and I think if people can find ways of considering social responsibility, environmental responsibility, and along with, I guess, economic responsibility as well, there's no greater time than at the moment to, I guess, be really big picture, holistic thinkers in business, but just as an individual as well. Yeah.
And I don't think it has to be big. I think, even from here, the little things, I mentioned to you before, I moved back to my parents and, there's no green bin or compost. And so I've created one. And I think it's just those little things of, you don't, we're so overwhelmed, but just start to create the steps that might think, or think a little bit about how you might minimize plastic, or
Yeah.
recycle food, or do different things that have a beehive. I don't know, that's being extreme, but there's little things that we can do and that we can start to think, and it's that first step.
Mm.
So not
Yeah.
you have to change the world and you have to fix the environment. It's just, what can I do in my little pocket of the world that, for the future, that will leave behind. And I think that's a really important, a really important message. And I
It
think
is.
for
Yeah.
such a time as this, we have this ability, when we have been brought to our knees, to learn and grow, and who do we want to become, or who do we want to be when we get out of this.
Mm.
If we ignore it and avoid it, we'll miss the time. We'll miss it, I think.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great opportunity right now to really question. Like, a lot of people go, "Oh, when are we going back to normal?" But do we want to go back to the normal? Like, I think there's great opportunities to do things differently, to learn and hold on to some of the things that we've had to adapt and get used to at the moment. And yeah, let's be really excited about the new normal that we're going to create.
Yeah,
Mm.
and there's that Davis Hollis quote, which is about that. What does the new normal look like, or what
Mm.
part of normal do we want to go back to? Because I think we did lose our way a bit, and we have, with all the mental health issues and the drought and all those different types of things that will eventually seep into the city. Like, I think we can easily separate it because we don't see it. But I remember thinking, when the fires were happening, this is what it feels like, to have the impact in our lungs, in our eyes, of a fire, of understanding what a drought or a disaster looks like. Because if it rains, we don't see anything, and so therefore it doesn't exist. Whereas if it's
Mm.
in our face and we're so exposed to it, and I think that it shows us. And so it was this little kind of introduction to, we need to think differently, in such a big way. So it's good.
Yeah, it
It has
sure
been
is.
such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank
Thanks for having me. It's been really wonderful.
It's been too long, between never meeting, but I really appreciate it. I will put all the Department of Primary Industries information in the comments below, and if you have any questions, I'll get you some details. But
Yeah.
so much for having us, Pip.
No, not a problem at all. It's been really great to be along, and thanks for being open to having a chat with a government agency.
I think it's really important, and I think you do such amazing work. And I don't, as I said, I was at a Rotary conference and I watched you talk about your programs, and I have since been up to Scone and had a chat with one of your resilience, rural resilience. And there's so much amazing work that's happening, and just for people to know that you exist, especially when we can be so isolated, but also for our community, all communities, to know that this is possible. It's that example of what you're doing. It's so great. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.